Hello guys, this is your friend Itachi Fanfic 3.0 and we are back a new fanfic story which is What if Naruto time traveled 20 years? Part 2. Let's start fanfic without wasting more time. Naruto stood at the edge of the Hokage monument as dawn unfolded over the Hidden Leaf village. The golden light touched every rooftop, every street, every distant training ground. It was the same Konoha he knew, yet not the same at all. In this timeline, he was the unknown variable, a man displaced from his own era, carrying burdens his younger self hadn't yet learned existed. He drew a slow breath, steadying himself. The weight of what he had already discovered pressed heavily on him. The power imbalance, the fragile alliances, the dangers quietly taking root long before they bloomed in his own time. And above all, the presence of his younger self, a boy still wandering in the shadows of loneliness, unaware of the storm approaching. Naruto knew he had to move carefully. Every action he took here could ripple through time, rewriting destinies he treasured. He descended from the monument with a renewed calm, the kind that only came from years of loss, triumph, and painful victories. As he walked through the village, he noticed villagers giving him curious glances. Their eyes lingered on his cloak, his steady posture, the quiet weight he carried. He wasn't a stranger who blended in, he radiated experience, and that alone stirred whispers. Yet Naruto ignored them. His mind was focused on a single purpose: understanding why fate had pulled him backward. His first destination was the old library, a place he rarely visited in his youth. He needed history. The kind hidden between lines, the kind only the wise preserved. The librarian, an elderly woman with fading eyes, watched him enter with surprise. She could not place him, though something in her gaze suggested she felt an odd familiarity. Naruto politely asked for access to restricted scrolls. His tone, calm and authoritative without trying to be, made the woman hesitate. She had heard that tone from exactly one person before, the third Hokage. Without questioning further, she handed him a pass and returned to her silent desk. Naruto stepped into the archive hall and felt the heavy stillness of knowledge. He began reading, searching for anomalies, anything that could explain a time displacement phenomenon. But the scrolls only spoke of ancient clans, forgotten battles, and fragments of sealing techniques. None spoke of sudden time shifts. There was something else, though. Naruto found a record of a dormant chakra disturbance reported years before his own birth. A strange flux of energy measured in the outskirts of the village, so faint the elders dismissed it as ambient natural chakra misreading. But Naruto sensed it wasn't a coincidence. His instincts, sharpened through countless wars and near-death encounters, whispered that this energy might have been the first echo of the distortion that later pulled him through time. He closed the scroll slowly, thinking. Something ancient was dormant. Something that had waited decades before stirring again. Naruto left the library and made his way toward the forest. He wanted to re-examine the energy source personally. But halfway toward the outer woods, someone stepped in front of him. It was Kakashi. Younger, sharper, and far more suspicious than the calm mentor Naruto remembered. Kakashi didn't say a word at first. He simply studied Naruto with a gaze so precise it seemed to peel away layers of his soul. Naruto could sense the difference. This Kakashi was still shaped by the trauma of losing Obito and Rin, and by the solitude that followed him like a shadow. Finally, Kakashi spoke quietly. You move like a shinobi with decades of battle behind him. Your chakra feels ancient. Who are you? Naruto met his eyes, and for a moment, a wave of emotion surged through him. He had trained under this man. He had learned from him, fought beside him, cried for him. But this Kakashi didn't know him yet. And if Naruto revealed too much, everything could collapse. I'm just someone searching for answers, Naruto replied softly. Kakashi's expression tightened. That doesn't explain why your chakra feels like a storm being held behind a locked door. Naruto almost smiled at the accuracy. Even now, Kakashi read him better than most. Before Naruto could respond, a sudden flare of chakra erupted deep in the forest, the same direction Naruto had been walking toward. Kakashi sensed it too. Without hesitation, he vanished into motion. Naruto followed. The forest was still, the air tense as if holding its breath. The chakra spike wasn't large, but it was unnatural, dense, compressed, and vibrating in an unstable rhythm. Naruto stepped closer and saw a faint distortion shimmering among the trees, like a wound carved into the air itself. Kakashi arrived a heartbeat later, shocked. What is that? Naruto didn't answer. He recognized the anomaly. It was a temporal fracture, the residue of the force that pulled him through time. But this one was weaker, incomplete, like a doorway half formed. Then the fracture pulsed, and a voice, faint, broken, and echoing, seeped through. Uzumaki, you cannot stay. Naruto froze. He knew that voice. It belonged to Kurama. But not the Kurama of this time, the Kurama from Naruto's original timeline. A Kurama who had died in the battle against Toshiki Otsutsuki. A Kurama who should not exist anymore. Naruto stepped forward instinctively. The fracture flickered, reacting to his presence like a flame touched by wind. Kakashi looked at him sharply. You know what this is. Naruto exhaled slowly. He couldn't tell the entire truth. Not yet. There's something trapped between timelines, he said quietly. Something trying to reach me. Kakashi didn't understand. How could he? The fracture pulsed again, then collapsed abruptly, as if swallowed from within. The forest fell silent. Naruto clenched his fists. This wasn't random. It was a message. Someone, or something, was manipulating time. And Kurama's voice was a warning. Naruto was in danger simply by being here. As they walked back toward the village, Kakashi watched him closely. Whoever you are, he said finally, your existence here is not normal. And whatever that phenomenon was, it's connected to you. Naruto didn't deny it. I know. Kakashi narrowed his eye. Then understand this. I will be watching you. Naruto accepted this silently. Kakashi's vigilance was something he respected. Maybe even needed. As night fell, Naruto sat alone on the Hokage monument once more. The stars shimmered above him. Stars he had looked at countless times in the future. Stars that now belonged to a past he wasn't meant to see. He thought of Kurama. Of the voice calling to him from beyond time. Of the danger he hadn't yet understood. And of the younger version of himself sleeping somewhere in the village, dreaming of acknowledgement he hadn't yet received. Naruto closed his eyes. If time had brought him back, then time was also giving him a test. It was not enough to just observe the past. He had to protect it, even from forces older than history itself. The night deepened, and Naruto, the man out of time, knew that the true reason for his return was only just beginning to reveal itself. Naruto walked through the quiet forest path that circled behind the training grounds, feeling the weight of the past pressing against him like a second shadow. Every branch, every stone, every breath of wind felt both familiar and distant, like fragments from a dream he had once lived but no longer fully recognized. He paused near an old tree whose roots twisted outward like ancient fingers. This place had once been a shortcut he used as a child, when tomorrow was simple, when loss had not yet carved itself into his heart. Now it felt like neutral ground between two eras pulling at him from opposite directions. Naruto allowed his thoughts to settle, but the silence only deepened the ache inside him. He had spoken with Hiruzen. He had been seen by Itachi. He had been welcomed by a young Shisui. But no matter how gently they approached him, he knew he was an anomaly, something that didn't belong, something that time itself struggled to place. He leaned back against the tree and exhaled slowly. He had promised himself he wouldn't change too much too quickly. But his mere existence here was already a disruption. He could feel it. The air around him shifted. Not physically, but in the way instincts whisper before danger appears. Naruto didn't sense hostility, only awareness, like the world had noticed him more sharply. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. He already knew someone was approaching. A faint presence, cautious but not fearful, moved through the trees. Someone small, someone young, someone who hadn't yet learned how to hide their chakra properly. Naruto waited, letting the presence draw closer. And then a young voice, careful, hesitant, yet quietly determined, spoke his name from behind. Naruto opened his eyes. He turned slowly, expecting perhaps a curious clan child or an Anbu sent to observe him. But instead, he saw someone who made his breath catch. A small boy stood there, staring at him with a mixture of confusion and hidden vulnerability. Spiky blonde hair, bright blue eyes, clothes too big for him. A lonely expression Naruto knew far too well. It was him. The boy he used to be. The child who had once wandered Konoha unnoticed, unheard, unloved. Naruto's heart twisted. He stood facing his younger self. Fragile, isolated, unaware of the storms that would shape him into who he eventually became. The younger Naruto looked at him carefully, not recognizing him, yet drawn to him in a way he didn't understand. It reminded Naruto that even in his loneliness, that little boy had always sensed sincerity, warmth, and danger without being taught how. Naruto forced a gentle smile, though his chest ached. The boy asked a simple question, one that trembled slightly at the edges. A question filled with suspicion, curiosity, and the echo of someone who rarely received honest answers. Naruto couldn't respond immediately. The sight of his younger self, so small, so alone, threatened to crack open every memory he had carefully sealed away over the years. The child waited. Naruto knelt slowly so their eyes were level. He didn't lie. He didn't reveal too much. He simply offered the boy what he himself had needed most at that age, a small reassurance that the world was not as empty as it felt. The younger Naruto blinked, surprised. No one had ever spoken to him the way this stranger did. A small, fragile connection wove between them, delicate, dangerous, precious. And in that moment, Naruto realized something powerful. Changing the past wasn't just about preventing tragedies or saving lives. It was also about healing loneliness, his own, and others. Before he could say more, the boy's attention shifted suddenly. He glanced behind himself, sensing someone watching. Naruto looked too. Someone else had noticed this meeting. Someone whose presence carried deep perception and silent intensity. A figure stood at a distance, half hidden among the trees. Not approaching. Not confronting. Simply witnessing. Naruto recognized that presence instantly. Itachi. The young prodigy had followed the smaller Naruto to make sure he was safe, and had now discovered the older Naruto standing before the child version of himself. Naruto felt the timeline tighten, twisting like a thread pulled too sharply. This moment, this impossible meeting, would change something. He didn't know what. He only knew it had begun. Naruto remained in the Hokage's quiet chamber long after the conversation ended. The silence felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were thinking through everything Hiruzen had learned and everything Naruto had chosen not to reveal. The room carried drifting traces of incense, old paper, and generations of decisions, some noble, some painful, all etched into the village's history. Naruto stared at the wooden floor, tracing patterns in its grain with his eyes. He wondered how much truth he should share, how much he should change, and how much he should let unfold naturally. Every breath he took felt like a choice between two futures he could not fully see. He finally rose, bowed to the third Hokage with quiet respect, and left the chamber. As he walked through Konoha's older streets, He noticed small things he had forgotten. Vendors calling out softer than he remembered, the smell of fresh rice from the market, the laughter of children that carried no fear, no trauma, no war. The present he came from felt distant, almost unreal compared to this untouched snapshot of Konoha. But beneath the peaceful surface, Naruto sensed tension threading itself into the air. Not danger. Not yet. But a subtle shift, like the world adjusting to the presence of someone who did not belong. He stopped near the training grounds, watching the younger genin practicing their movements with clumsy determination. They didn't know the path ahead of them. They didn't know the battles that would one day scar these fields. Naruto observed them with a strange ache in his chest. He saw a young medic trainee trip on her own feet. He saw a shy boy hide behind a tree when his kunai missed the target. Small moments. Mundane moments. Moments that the future rarely preserved. Naruto felt a quiet longing to protect this simplicity. But time did not allow simplicity. As he turned to leave, he sensed someone following him. Not stealthily, not with malice, but with curiosity mixed with a deeper purpose. The chakra signature was familiar in a way that made Naruto's heart tighten. Not as a friend, not as an enemy, but as someone who once stood at the edge of fate's decisions. Naruto did not turn immediately. He waited, letting the presence approach at its own pace. When the figure finally stepped into view, Naruto exhaled quietly. It was someone who should not have been interested in him at all. Someone who preferred distance. Someone whose mind was always 10 steps ahead. A young Itachi. Not the Itachi from the war, burdened by sorrow. Not the Itachi he had fought, forgiven, and mourned. This Itachi was different. Still bound to his clan, still shaped by hope and doubt, still wrestling with the choices he would one day make. Naruto studied him, searching for the cracks the future Itachi hid so well. He found none. This Itachi's face held only calm discipline. Itachi did not speak at first. He simply observed Naruto the way one peers through fog, looking for the shape of the truth without forcing it. Naruto felt exposed in a way he hadn't expected. Not threatened, but seen. Finally, Itachi spoke. Not coldly, not accusingly, but with a sincerity born of instinct. He said something simple, something quietly perceptive, something that made Naruto's breath catch. A question, yes, but deeper than that, a recognition. As if Itachi sensed Naruto did not belong to this time. As if he sensed a burden in Naruto's eyes that no ordinary shinobi carried. Naruto didn't answer immediately. He didn't lie. But he didn't reveal the truth either. Itachi didn't push further. Instead, he offered something Naruto had not expected: respect. The kind of respect one gives someone fighting an invisible war. For a moment, time felt suspended between them. Two souls separated by 2 decades, meeting in a fragile alignment neither of them could fully comprehend. And then, as Itachi stepped back, the atmosphere shifted once more. This time, Naruto sensed 2 presences watching from afar. Not enemies. Not allies. But people whose futures were bound to Naruto in ways he had not yet touched in this timeline. Naruto looked toward the distant treeline, where those presences lingered like quiet questions waiting to be answered. Time was moving. Destiny was stirring. And Naruto could feel that whatever brought him 20 years into the past was preparing its next step. The forest around Naruto remained still as he turned toward the presence emerging from the shadows. It was neither hostile nor cautious, but strangely certain, as though the one approaching him knew exactly where he would be and why. The figure stepped into view, a silhouette framed by the filtered sunlight, familiar yet impossible in this place and time. It was a man with a quiet composure, someone Naruto recognized not from his childhood but from his later years. The expression was unreadable, carved from a life of duty and sacrifice. Naruto felt the weight of that presence settle around him like a memory he had not expected to relive. The man stopped a few steps away, his gaze steady yet analytical. Naruto did not speak. He simply watched, allowing the truth to rise without force. The man was older than Naruto remembered, perhaps a version who had already begun to understand his own burdens. Someone who, in the future, had walked beside Naruto through wars and hardships. Yet here, 2 decades in the past, this man should not have known him at all. A realization flickered through Naruto. This person had sensed something unusual in the flow of time long before Naruto arrived. He had been waiting. Not for Naruto specifically, but for the inevitable distortion that someone like Naruto would cause. Naruto lowered his gaze momentarily, not out of submission but out of respect. He knew that whatever conversation was about to unfold would shape his purpose in this time. The man took one careful step forward, studying Naruto as if piecing together a puzzle that was too large for any normal shinobi to comprehend. Naruto's heart steadied. He had faced countless dangers, but this moment felt different. It was not a threat. It was a turning point. He braced himself for questions, suspicion, or fear. But what he received instead was something far gentler, something surprisingly human. A question. Simple, direct, heavy with understanding. Naruto felt time's current shift slightly, as if leaning closer to listen. He did not answer immediately. His mind drifted to the reasons he might have been brought here. Protection, correction, redemption, guidance. Countless possibilities swirled within him, each one heavy with responsibility. But none felt complete. None felt like the whole truth. The man before him waited patiently, the way someone waits for a truth they already suspect but want to hear spoken aloud. Naruto considered the consequences of revealing anything. The past was fragile. Even the smallest detail could crack it open. But he sensed something in the other man's presence, a steadiness that would not break easily. Naruto finally spoke, not with detail, but with intention. He chose his words with the care of someone balancing two eras on a single thread. When he finished, the forest seemed to breathe again. The man before him accepted the answer, not fully understanding but sensing honesty in it. For the first time since Naruto arrived in this timeline, he did not feel like a stranger. He felt seen. Not for what he was supposed to be, but for what he had become. The man turned slightly, as if gesturing for Naruto to follow him deeper into the forest. But before moving, he paused and glanced back, offering a reassurance so quiet, so unexpected, that it eased the tension Naruto had carried since his arrival. Naruto took a step forward, knowing the path ahead was changing. The village would soon know that someone extraordinary had entered their era. And this man, the first to approach him without fear, would become the bridge between Naruto and the past he was trying so hard not to disturb. As they walked, Naruto sensed the disturbance in time growing stronger. Whatever had followed him, whatever force had called him back 20 years, was beginning to take shape. It was no longer just a vague ripple. It was becoming a direction, a presence, a warning. The man stopped at the edge of a quiet clearing and faced Naruto once more. His eyes held a silent message, one that told Naruto that his journey in this past would not be solitary, and that the truth he carried would soon demand more from him than he ever expected. Naruto felt the weight of destiny settle on his shoulders again, not from the future he left behind, but from the past that now awaited him. The clearing where Naruto and the man stood felt like a quiet pause in the flow of time. The leaves hung motionless, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would unfold next. The man's presence, calm, composed, strangely aware, remained steady, anchoring the moment with a gravity that Naruto felt deep in his bones. Naruto studied him carefully, sensing layers beneath the surface. This was a man who understood duty the way few did, a man who carried burdens with silent discipline. Naruto had seen that look before, many years later, on faces hardened by war. But here, In this timeline, it was rare. Too rare. The man did not rush. He simply observed Naruto with a patience that felt almost ancient. As Naruto prepared himself to explain more, something unexpected happened. Instead of asking questions, instead of pressing for answers, the man spoke first. His voice was low, steady, almost philosophical, like someone who understood that truth was rarely simple. Naruto listened, surprised by how closely the man's thoughts aligned with something he himself had learned only much later in life. The words were not accusations. They were not demands. They were insights. Carefully offered, quietly profound. The man was trying to understand without forcing Naruto into a corner. It was then that Naruto realized something important. This man was not suspicious of him. He was concerned for him. Naruto had expected doubt, perhaps fear, maybe even hostility. But instead, the man saw through him in a way almost no one in the past ever had. He sensed the weight Naruto carried, the exhaustion tucked behind his determination, the sorrow hidden beneath his stubborn hope. Naruto lowered his eyes for a moment, letting the truth settle inside him. It felt strange to be understood by someone who had no reason to know him. The man took a slow step closer, as if choosing his words with careful intention. Naruto felt a shift in the air, not a change in danger, but a change in connection. Time itself seemed to listen again. The man finally asked one quiet question. Not about Naruto's identity, not about where he came from, but about what he intended to do now that he was here. The question struck deeper than Naruto expected. He thought about Sasuke's younger self, still innocent enough to be saved. He thought about Shisui, alive, full of potential, unaware of the tragedy looming over him. He thought about Itachi, torn between love and duty, already sensing storms on the horizon. He thought about the village, calm now, but destined for pain and war in the years ahead. Naruto breathed in slowly. He knew exactly what he wanted. But he didn't know if he should want it. Changing the past meant changing people he loved. Saving one life meant altering many others. And altering too much might shatter the future entirely. The man watched Naruto's hesitation without judgment. He understood that burden. He had lived with similar crossroads before. Naruto finally answered with quiet conviction. Not a full explanation, but a promise rooted deep in his heart. It was a promise to protect, to guide, to prevent suffering where he could, to respect the past even as he tried to reshape it for the better. The man accepted this answer without pressing further. His silence was not doubt, it was trust. An unspoken agreement formed between them, stronger than any oath. As they began to walk back toward Konoha, Naruto sensed another ripple in time, faint yet undeniable. Something was shifting in response to his presence. Something aware. Something watching. The man glanced toward the same direction, sensing it too, though he did not fully understand its nature. Naruto felt his pulse steady. The past was no longer passive. It had begun to move around him. Whatever force had pulled him 20 years back was not done. And the next step of his journey would test not just his strength, but Naruto continued walking through the older Konoha, feeling the weight of secrets he could not share. Every street felt both familiar and painfully distant. He had traveled 20 years back, but the world around him was not ready to understand what he carried in his heart. His own younger self was somewhere in this timeline, lonely, lost, unaware of the man he would one day become. And Naruto wondered whether crossing paths with that younger version would be fate, or a danger to everything he loved. He moved with the quiet determination of someone carrying destiny on his shoulders. Every step reminded him that he did not belong to this era, yet every breath convinced him that he had been brought here for a reason, one he had yet to discover. He passed Shinobi who looked at him with confusion, sensing something strange in his chakra. He hid his emotions, knowing that even a single slip could alter the future irreversibly. Konoha's sky, untouched by future wars, felt like a lie. Naruto had seen this village burn, had seen friends fall, had seen hope shaken. Yet here, everything was calm, peaceful, unaware of the storms to come. A part of him longed to stay in this untouched serenity, but another part whispered that he had not come for peace. He had come to correct something. Maybe something small, maybe something catastrophic. He soon felt a presence watching him, and although it was familiar, he remained silent. A figure followed him from a distance, a shinobi of the era, curious but cautious. Naruto did not turn, pretending not to notice. He understood he could not afford recognition yet. The village was already whispering about the mysterious stranger with an aura too strong and too ancient. Naruto walked toward the training grounds where future legends had shaped their strength. The field was empty, untouched by rivalry or ambition, just a quiet expanse where dreams were planted. He sat on a lone wooden post, letting the wind brush past him. His mind drifted to Jiraiya, Tsunade, Kakashi, and countless others who were alive in this time. The temptation to meet them was overwhelming, but he knew every interaction carried consequences. He thought about Minato and Kushina, the parents he lost long before knowing them. They were alive somewhere in this timeline, living ordinary lives, unaware that their grown son walked among them. He wondered what they would think if they could see him now, not as the child who was left behind, but as a man who had fought gods. A longing he tried to suppress tightened in his chest. He was not sure he could resist meeting them forever. But fate did not wait for his decision. A masked Anbu appeared silently at the edge of the field, watching him with stillness that carried suspicion rather than hostility. Naruto did not move. The Anbu kept their distance but did not hide their interest. They sensed something ancient inside him, something that should not exist in their era. Naruto closed his eyes and let his chakra flow gently around him, not as a threat but as an answer. The Anbu froze, overwhelmed by the depth of Naruto's presence. It was not power alone. It was experience, grief, triumph, sacrifice, all woven into a single heartbeat. It was the chakra of someone who had carried an entire world toward peace. The Anbu disappeared without a word, but Naruto knew. The information had been sent to the higher-ups. Somewhere inside the Hokage building, questions were already being formed. Naruto rose and walked toward the forests beyond the village, needing time alone before the inevitable confrontation. In the quiet isolation of the trees, he let himself think honestly. He wondered what his purpose truly was. Saving someone, stopping someone, guiding someone, or perhaps learning something that the future had forgotten. Unexpectedly, he felt a shift in the air, an unnatural ripple, faint but undeniable. He recognized it instantly. Time itself was fluctuating, reacting to his presence. The world was trying to settle around him, but it could not. His arrival had already begun to carve new pathways in the future. He touched the rough bark of a tree, letting his chakra seep into it. The tree trembled faintly, as if recognizing him. Naruto had changed the destiny of countless lives in the future. Now the past was trying to understand who he was. His thoughts drifted to the younger version of himself. That boy was alone right now, isolated by the village, unaware of the love he would one day receive. A part of Naruto ached to help him, to give him comfort, to show him that the loneliness would not last forever. But he also knew that if he interfered too deeply, he might erase the very strength that shaped his future self. He turned his gaze toward the direction of the orphanage. The urge to see the young Naruto tugged at him again, but he shook his head. Some battles had to be fought alone, and that child needed to learn that strength through pain, just as Naruto himself once had. Instead, he focused on the strange disturbance in time. Something else had come through. Not a person, not a creature, something more subtle. A shadow of possibility. A thread out of place. Naruto felt a cold certainty settle deep in his heart. He had not been brought here by accident. Someone, or something, wanted him in this era. As the sunlight dimmed behind the treetops, Naruto felt a presence call his name, not by voice, but by memory. Someone familiar approached from behind him, someone who should not know him, yet somehow did. Naruto turned slowly, and in that moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. His understanding of fate itself. The night spread quietly over the village, but Naruto felt anything except peace. The faint rhythmic pulse that had stirred in the forest lingered in his senses like an echo he could not shake off. Years of battles had sharpened his intuition, and right now, every instinct told him something was watching him from beyond the timeline. He walked slowly across the rooftops, his thoughts circling the meeting he had just had with his younger self. The boy's words, so familiar yet distant, weighed on him. Seeing that stubborn spark of hope again reminded him of everything he had once fought for, and everything he still had to protect. Naruto stopped near a tall cedar, letting his chakra extend outward, feeling the environment with a precision only years of mastery could grant. The anomaly pulsed again. Faint, but unmistakable. It was like a heartbeat beneath the earth, steady, patient, waiting. He knew it was time to investigate. Quietly, he moved toward the forest edge. Not rushing, not alarming the village. His steps were controlled, deliberate. As he walked, he noticed something odd. The animals in the forest were unsettled. It wasn't visible through sound, but through the subtle shifts in their movement patterns. Birds landing in wrong places. Insects gathering in abnormal clusters. Even the trees felt tense, their natural chakra flow slightly distorted. The deeper he went, the stronger the sensation grew. Then he reached a clearing, an old spot he remembered from childhood. It was where he used to practice alone when no one would train with him. The place felt painfully familiar, and unnervingly altered. The ground was marked by faint spirals of chakra residue, still lingering from the collapsed temporal fracture earlier. But now there was something else too, a faint trail of old, ancient chakra, so old it felt dusty, like it had been asleep for centuries. Naruto knelt down, touching the earth carefully. This chakra wasn't random. It had structure. It had purpose. And it belonged to something he recognized. Otsutsuki energy. Naruto's jaw tightened. He shouldn't feel chakra like this in this timeline. The Otsutsuki presence should have been distant, barely even known to the world yet. For energy this old and potent to exist here, someone had disturbed something that was meant to remain buried. As he rose, he sensed another presence behind him. He didn't turn immediately. The chakra was gentle, familiar, but laced with curiosity. Only one person in this era had such a composed aura, someone who watched the village from the shadows, guarding it with silent precision. The Anbu mask reflected pale moonlight as its wearer stepped forward. "Who are you really?" the Anbu operative asked quietly. Naruto finally turned. He recognized the stance, the posture, the controlled breathing. Even behind the mask, he knew the identity. This was Itachi. Younger, sharper, not yet broken by the weight of impossible decisions. His presence alone carried calmness that seemed carved out of stone. Naruto gave him a steady look. "A traveler," he answered again. Itachi stepped closer, his movements silent but purposeful. "Your chakra does not belong to any era I know. You are not lying, but you are not telling the truth either." Naruto didn't flinch. "You can sense the disturbance too, can't you?" Itachi's eyes narrowed slightly behind the mask. "I sense enough to know that this forest is not safe tonight." He walked past Naruto, examining the clearing. He crouched near the spiraled residue, touching the ground lightly. "This energy, it is not human. Not from any clan." His voice lowered. "It is older." Naruto appreciated how quickly Itachi understood what others would dismiss as superstition. The older Naruto inhaled slowly. You shouldn't get involved in this. Itachi stood up, turning to face him. If it threatens the village, I am already involved. Naruto felt respect rise inside him. The same respect he had carried in the future, knowing Itachi's hidden sacrifices. But that didn't change the fact that this situation was tangled with forces beyond the current era. Itachi, Naruto said softly, carefully choosing his words, some threats are not meant for the present. Some are meant for someone like me. Itachi's silence stretched, his mind processing every nuance. He didn't ask how Naruto knew his name. He didn't show shock. He simply observed, absorbing truth without needing explanation. You are connected to this anomaly, Itachi said. Every change in the air circles around your presence. Naruto nodded faintly. Then answer a question, Itachi said. Are you here to protect the village, or endanger it? Naruto looked at him directly. Not with aggression, but with the weight of everything he had lived through. I'm here to protect it, he said. From something even you haven't seen. Itachi studied him in silence. Then, slowly, he stepped back. I believe you. The simplicity of that trust, coming from someone as perceptive and guarded as Itachi, surprised Naruto. It reminded him of how pure Itachi's instinct had always been. But before Naruto could say anything more, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. The heartbeat-like pulse returned, stronger now. The air rippled, not violently, not loudly, but with a deep pressure that forced Naruto's breath to tighten. Itachi sensed it too, hand instinctively drifting to his side where a kunai rested. Naruto felt the distortion forming again. A second temporal fracture. Only this time, it wasn't weak. The chakra swirling in the air carried structure, purpose, and intent. Naruto stepped forward protectively, blocking Itachi with one arm. Itachi didn't protest. He understood the danger instantly. The fracture shimmered into shape, a tear of shimmering light opening slowly in midair, far more stable than before. And from within it, a shadow began to emerge. Slow, deliberate, patient. Naruto's heartbeat thundered once, a single heavy strike of realization. The silhouette was not Kurama. Not an Otsutsuki. Not a beast. It was human. Someone from another timeline. Someone who had found the same path Naruto had traveled. A voice drifted through the fracture. Deep, calm, familiar in a way that unsettled Naruto to the core. Uzumaki Naruto, I finally found you. Naruto stepped forward, tension gripping his muscles. The figure emerged fully from the light. Cloaked, masked, tall, radiating power. And Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief. He knew that chakra. He knew that presence. It was a future shinobi, one who should not exist in this era. Someone who had followed Naruto through time. The night grew heavy as fate shifted again. And Naruto realized, he was no longer the only time traveler in the past. For a moment, time felt suspended. The older Naruto, the man shaped by wars, loss, friendships, and countless battles, stood face to face with the boy who had only just begun his lonely journey. Young Naruto blinked up at him, confused but bold, carrying the stubborn spark that would one day ignite into a flame strong enough to change the world. The older Naruto felt an ache in his chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shock. It was a feeling so raw he had almost forgotten how to name it. Sorrow mixed with pride. He saw the worn-out sandals, the patched clothing, the way the boy tried to stand tall even though no one truly saw him. Naruto remembered those nights. Nights where he wandered through rooftops just to escape the silence of an empty apartment. Nights where he asked the sky why no one cared about him. Nights where he pretended strength to hide the fractures inside. Looking at his younger self stirred memories he had buried under years of battles and responsibilities. The boy finally spoke again. You hear me? I asked who you are. His voice was sharp, defensive, almost challenging. The tone Naruto had once used to shield himself from the world. The older Naruto lowered himself slowly, sitting at the edge of the rooftop so he wouldn't tower over the child. He didn't want to intimidate him. I'm just a traveler, he said gently. Someone passing through. Young Naruto narrowed his eyes. You talk weird. And your chakra feels warm. The older Naruto's heart tightened. Even without training, the child could instinctively sense the nature of chakra. His own chakra, matured, balanced, and touched by Kurama, radiated strength and warmth. What are you doing up here alone? The older Naruto asked softly. Young Naruto shrugged. Same thing I do every night. Wandering around. No one cares if I'm home or not. The words struck harder than any enemy's attack. The older Naruto wanted to respond, to comfort him, to change everything, but he knew even one small truth spoken at the wrong moment could shift the entire future. He forced himself to keep calm. You should be resting, he said quietly. The boy scoffed. Resting is boring. And my apartment is cold anyway. Naruto inhaled slowly. His younger self didn't even realize how deeply those simple words revealed the pain he carried. You're strong, Naruto said. Stronger than you think. The child blinked, surprised. Huh. You endure things most kids could never handle, the older Naruto continued. You keep moving forward even when it's hard. That makes you incredible. Young Naruto stared at him. Truly stared. As if no one had ever spoken to him like that before. TCH. Whatever, the boy muttered, looking away quickly to hide the emotion in his eyes. Naruto smiled softly. He remembered that too. The way he used to look away anytime words became too kind, too caring. Kindness felt foreign back then. Almost threatening. Young Naruto sat down beside him, legs dangling over the edge of the rooftop. He wasn't scared. Somehow, sitting near this stranger felt natural, almost comforting. You know, the child said stubbornly, one day I'm going to be Hokage. The older Naruto turned to him, and for a moment, he didn't speak. Hearing those words spoken with such fierce hope felt different now. Back then, he shouted the dream to prove something. Now, he understood it carried responsibility far beyond ambition. That's a good dream, the older Naruto said softly. It's not just good, it's real. I'll make everyone recognize me. The boy declared with conviction. Then he frowned. But people don't think I can do anything. Naruto felt the old ache resurfacing. He wanted to tell him everything. That he would succeed, that people would acknowledge him, that he would surpass every expectation ever placed on him. But time was delicate, and the truth could break things too early. So he spoke differently. Listen, the older Naruto said, turning slightly toward the child. Even if the whole world doubts you, you can't doubt yourself. That dream of yours, it's the kind that changes everything. Young Naruto blinked rapidly, absorbing every word. Do you think I'll really make it? Naruto paused, choosing his words with the care of someone who knew their weight. I think you're meant for greatness, he said. And even if the path is hard, you won't walk it alone forever. Young Naruto's eyes softened, curiosity flickering beneath them. You talk like you know me. The older Naruto felt his breath hitch, but he kept his expression calm. Maybe I do, he said quietly. Before the boy could ask more, Naruto felt a sudden shift in the air, a ripple in chakra so faint and distant that only someone who had battled gods could sense it. It came from deep within the forest, the same region where the temporal fracture had appeared earlier. His body tensed. Something was stirring again. Young Naruto noticed the change. Hey, what's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about, the older Naruto said, standing up slowly. You should head home. It's late. The boy frowned. Are you going to fight someone? Naruto shook his head. Not tonight. You're weird, the child muttered. Naruto smiled gently. Maybe. But you're going to be just fine. Young Naruto stared at him a long moment. Then he hopped to his feet and grinned. You better come find me again. I wanna ask you things. The older Naruto hesitated. Meeting again risked the timeline. But avoiding him completely would break the fragile bond forming here. I'll try, he said. The boy nodded, satisfied, and ran off across the rooftops with a burst of reckless energy. The older Naruto watched him until he vanished. When silence returned, he let out a slow, heavy breath. He had met his younger self. And he had survived it. But the encounter left him shaken in ways he hadn't expected. He turned toward the forest, sensing the distant pulse again, sharper this time, rhythmic, like a heartbeat buried under the earth. Something ancient was waking. Something tied to the distortion of time. And someone, or something, was calling him deeper into the past. Naruto clenched his fists. Time had brought him back for a reason. And the real threat was only beginning to stir. Night settled across the Hidden Leaf village with a calmness that felt deceptive. Naruto remained seated atop the Hokage monument, letting the cool wind brush against him. In his original timeline, nights like this had been rare. He had been Hokage, always surrounded by responsibilities that weighed on him. But here, in the past, the silence felt heavier, not because of duty, but because of possibility. The fractured voice of Kurama still echoed in his mind. Uzumaki, you cannot stay. Naruto replayed those words again and again, searching for their meaning. Kurama had never sounded desperate except in moments when the balance between life and death trembled. For him to speak through a temporal rift, Naruto knew something ancient had awakened. His thoughts drifted toward the younger version of himself. That boy, small, lonely, and unaware of every path ahead, slept somewhere in the village with dreams shaped by hunger and hope. And Naruto realized something he hadn't admitted even to himself. He wasn't ready to face him. Not yet. Meeting his younger self meant confronting every wound he had once carried. Every moment of isolation. Every tear shed behind empty buildings. Naruto wasn't afraid of danger. He was afraid of remembering pain he had locked away. But time would force that meeting eventually. Naruto stood up, brushing dust from his cloak, and descended the monument. He needed answers. And there was only one person alive in this era who might piece together what he couldn't. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. The village was quiet as Naruto walked through narrow streets, passing dim lanterns and houses where people slept peacefully. He paused often, noticing small details he had forgotten. The wooden fence near the academy, the old ramen stall that closed long before Ichiraku became popular, the cracked road that would later be rebuilt after the Chunin exams. Memories and reality blended in a strange harmony. When he reached the Hokage's residence, the guards looked startled. None dared stop him. Something in his presence, the calmness, the maturity etched into his movements, made them instinctively step aside. Naruto approached the Hokage's office. The door was slightly open. Inside, a faint glow of lamplight revealed Hiruzen sitting alone, reading scrolls with a tired, worried expression. Years of leadership had carved deep lines into his face. Before Naruto could speak, Hiruzen quietly said, "You may enter." Naruto stepped inside silently. Hiruzen looked at him with an expression that combined wisdom, suspicion, and a strange softness, the same gentle warmth Naruto remembered from childhood, but also the sharpness of a man who carried the village on his shoulders. "You have come because your heart is troubled," Hiruzen said. Naruto hesitated. "You can sense that. A shinobi who carries a lifetime of weight cannot hide it," Hiruzen replied. "And you, more than anyone I have met, carry a burden deeper than your age suggests." Naruto exhaled slowly. "There's something wrong with time itself." Hiruzen didn't react with surprise. Instead, he leaned back, listening. Naruto described the temporal fracture in the forest, the strange chakra readings from decades ago, and the voice that reached out to him, without revealing Kurama's true identity or his own future role. He spoke in careful fragments, revealing only what was necessary. Hiruzen remained silent for a long moment. Then he said, "There are forces older than our understanding. Chakra itself predates the hidden villages. Time, fate, destiny, these may be bound to it." Naruto felt a chill run through him. "Do you know anything that could explain this?" Hiruzen closed his eyes in thought. "Only legends. Tales of ancient beings who existed before chakra was divided among humans. Stories of realms beyond our world. Realms where time is fluid." Naruto's heart tightened. Otsutsuki. Even in this era, echoes of their influence lingered. Hiruzen opened his eyes again. "Tell me the truth, Naruto." The way he said Naruto's name, so naturally, so calmly, made Naruto stiffen. "You know," he whispered. "I know that you are no ordinary wanderer. When I look at you, I see someone who belongs here and yet doesn't. Someone connected to this village in ways I cannot explain." Naruto looked down, unsure how much to reveal. "I am not from this time," he admitted quietly. "I was pulled here, 20 years into the past." Hiruzen absorbed this without blinking. "Then your presence here is not a mistake. Time does not bend without purpose." Naruto clenched his fist. "If I've been brought back, what am I supposed to fix? What am I supposed to change?" Hiruzen stood, walking to the window overlooking the quiet village. "Perhaps the question is not what you should change," he said softly, "but what you are meant to protect." Those words struck Naruto deeply. They reminded him of something his future self had once said as Hokage. A shinobi's strength is measured by what they choose to protect. Hiruzen turned to him again. "You must be careful. Even a small alteration could reshape everything you know. But doing nothing may allow something far worse to unfold." Naruto nodded slowly. "I understand." Hiruzen smiled gently. "Good. Then rest for tonight. Tomorrow, answers may begin to reveal themselves." Naruto bowed slightly, something he had rarely done in his youth, and left the office. The night air felt colder now. He walked through the village until he found a quiet rooftop and sat down, staring at the moon. His thoughts drifted again to the younger Naruto, the boy he once was. And then a soft tug on his chakra made him pause. Someone was nearby. Naruto turned, expecting an Anbu. But instead, he saw a small figure standing at the edge of the rooftop, staring at him with wide, curious eyes. A boy wearing a worn-out orange t-shirt. A boy with messy blonde hair. A boy whose eyes carried loneliness and defiance intertwined. It was him. Young Naruto Uzumaki. The boy tilted his head slightly. "Hey, who are you?" Naruto felt the world stop. For the first time, the past and future stood face to face. His heart trembled. Not from fear, but from a wave of emotions so deep it nearly crushed him. The child he once was looked up at him expectantly, unaware of the man he would one day become. Naruto swallowed hard, gathering his breath. This meeting, unexpected, fragile, dangerous, would change everything. And the night held its breath as the timelines silently collided. Naruto felt the change long before the world showed it. A disturbance. A wrong thread in the fabric of time. He sensed it the moment Shisui and Itachi walked away, leaving him alone in the training field. The wind itself seemed heavier. As if something old, and broken, was waking earlier than it should. Naruto walked deeper into the woods, following the faint echo of a chakra signature he knew far too well. A presence that shouldn't exist here. Not yet. Not for years. Inside the thickening shadows, Naruto stopped. "Come out," he said softly. "I know you're there." The leaves rustled, and a figure stepped out, half lit, half swallowed by the shadows. A swirling orange mask. One eye hole. A single Sharingan glowing faintly behind it. Naruto's breath hitched. Obito. But not the broken man manipulated by Madara. This was younger. Alive. Conflicted. Carrying wounds, but not yet drowned in darkness. Obito studied him with sharp curiosity, as though trying to decide whether Naruto was real or a dream. You're strange, Obito said at last. Your chakra, it feels like the future. Naruto's heart tightened. So Obito had sensed it too. What do you want? Naruto asked quietly. Obito tilted his head. To know who you are, and why you feel like someone who shouldn't exist. Naruto didn't answer. Obito stepped closer. Your presence is disturbing the timeline, Obito continued. Even I, someone who knows a thing or two about warping space, can feel it. Naruto clenched his fists. Obito pointed at him gently. You're out of place. And out of time. Naruto didn't respond right away. He watched the masked young man, remembering everything he would one day do. The betrayals, the manipulation, the night Konoha burned, the deaths that followed. And yet, before all of that, Obito was just a boy who wanted to protect the girl he loved. A boy crushed by despair. Naruto felt pain leak into his voice. Obito, you don't know what's coming. Obito froze. Naruto continued quietly. You don't know the pain you'll face, the lies you'll be fed, the people you'll trust who will betray you. Obito's muscles tightened just a little. His visible eye flickered with confusion, denial, and something else, fear. Naruto stepped forward. Listen to me. You don't have to fall. You don't have to become someone else's weapon. You don't have to lose yourself. Obito took a step back. You speak like you know my future, he said sharply. Like you've seen the worst of me. Naruto swallowed. I have. The air grew cold. Obito's voice dropped. Then tell me. His hand trembled. What do I become? Naruto felt his chest tighten painfully. Someone who forgets his own heart. Obito's eye widened. Naruto saw everything inside that eye. Dreams, doubts, kindness, wounds. Obito wasn't lost yet. Not broken. Maybe Naruto could change this one too. But before Naruto could continue, another chakra signature suddenly approached. Fast, sharp, dangerous. Naruto knew that presence instantly. A powerful Jonin landed between the trees, scanning the area. Silver hair, cold eye, young face. Kakashi. Both Obito and Naruto stiffened. Kakashi's single visible eye locked onto them both. What's going on here? Kakashi asked quietly. Naruto felt the intensity rise. This was the moment the future itself was trembling. Obito stared at Kakashi. The boy he once trusted as a brother, then hated, then pitied, then loved again at the final moment of his life. Kakashi didn't recognize Obito. Not yet. But the chakra in that masked figure made him cautious, alert. Naruto stood frozen between two destinies that were never meant to meet like this. Obito whispered, voice trembling slightly. Kakashi. The world held its breath. Naruto knew. Whatever happened in the next few seconds would decide the fate of the entire future. Kakashi took a step forward. Obito took a step back. Naruto felt time splitting like glass. He had to choose. Protect Obito's fragile state. Hide Obito's identity. Or let the truth collide too early. Naruto whispered to himself. This timeline is breaking. And then Obito suddenly spoke again. Sharper, harsher. You shouldn't be here, Naruto. You're changing things you don't understand. Naruto's eyes hardened. I'm changing things I lived through. Obito stared at him, shaken. Kakashi watched them both with deep suspicion. Naruto knew he had seconds before everything spiraled out of control. So he took a slow breath, steadying himself. Obito, Naruto said firmly. You don't have to run from this world. You don't have to disappear. Obito's visible eye trembled. Something inside him softened. For a moment, just a moment, Naruto saw the boy Obito truly was. But then, like a crack forming in a wall, the fear inside Obito surged back. If I stay, I'll destroy everything, Obito whispered. Naruto stepped forward. That's not your destiny. Not anymore. Obito's hand twitched. as if wanting to reach out, but afraid. Naruto whispered again, "I'm here to save you." Obito froze. Everything froze. Even Kakashi felt the shift in the air. But just as Naruto took another step, Obito's chakra distorted. His Mangekyo awakened for a brief second, not from hate, but fear. And he vanished. Not with hatred. Not with anger. With confusion. With longing. With a spark of hope. Kakashi stared at the empty space where the masked figure had been. Naruto closed his eyes. "I'm too early, and too late at the same time," he murmured. Kakashi turned toward him. "Who was that?" Kakashi asked quietly. Naruto opened his eyes. "A ghost," Naruto answered, voice steady but heavy. "Someone who needs saving." Kakashi didn't understand. Not yet. But Naruto knew one thing clearly now. Time wasn't just shifting. It was starting to fight back. And Obito, alive, aware, unstable, was the first sign of a storm coming sooner than it ever should have. Naruto looked toward the night sky and whispered, "I can fix this. I have to." But even he didn't fully believe it. Not